Good afternoon. I am Rachel Humphrey with DEI Advisors, a nonprofit Arizona organization dedicated to empowering personal success among the future leaders in the hospitality industry. And I am delighted to welcome to the show today Shruti Gandhi Buckley with Hilton. Shruti, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here, Rachel.
We're going to spend about 30 minutes together today. We're going to talk about a whole range of topics from your journey in hospitality leadership to the lessons and insights you've learned along the way. And I want to jump right in because there's just so much ground we can cover. We're never going to have enough time. And start with your path to leadership. One of the things I really love about the hospitality industry is really how unique to each of us our path to leadership is. Yours and mine may end up in similar places, similar networks, but completely different paths that we took to get there. Tell us a little bit about your background and your path to your current role with Hilton today.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I've taken somewhat an unusual path into hospitality. I actually started my career journey in consumer product goods. So I spent several decades in a variety of different industries in brand management. I started out with food with Nestle Nabisco. I then moved to luxury cosmetics, working for Unilever and Chanel and Estee Lauder, and then made a pretty big pivot, moving to National Geographic to actually work on outdoor apparel and outdoor gear. And, it was interesting. That really helped to build a lot of my skill sets around marketing and branding and strategic thinking. But the one thing that I always loved and was always interested in was travel. And National Geographic based in DC. So I had a lot of exposure to some great folks from my past, terrific friends I had grown up with, gone to school with, that actually were at, some of the more prominent hospitality companies in the area. And that's actually how I made my move into hospitality. It was through networking and talking to friends and actually folks coming to me from one of Hilton's competitors at the time, Marriott, saying, "Hey, we think you'd be an interesting fit. Come talk to us. Let's see if this could be an interesting fit in terms of your background with hospitality." And the rest is history, right? So I joined Marriott from National Geographic, and I spent 8 years there managing a brand called Fairfield. So taking it from a brand that really was struggling to one of their largest brands and one of their growth leaders, which was really exciting. And then I had an unbelievable opportunity with Hilton to come in and work on a couple of different brands within the focus service category under Phil Cordell, an icon in the industry. So I made that move after many years of chasing the brand called Hampton, which is considered one of the strongest brands in the industry. To have an opportunity to actually lead that brand was pretty exciting. So after some time working across a variety of brands, I was able to take on a leadership opportunity on a global basis with Hampton. And that's what I'm still doing today, which has been great.
Well, that's exciting. And quite honestly, there's so many things that you mentioned in there that I want to talk about later today when we talk about how you got from one area of practice in the consumer goods over to hospitality, how you end up taking risks and do other things. I want to start with how I know you and why I like to give a little bit of input on how I've selected some of the guests that I have. But you are very well known in the industry for advocating for others. You are a wonderful voice for women, for others who are looking to get ahead in their careers in hotel ownership and in other things. And that was something that every time I see you, you want to sit down and you want to talk and what can I do for you and how can I help others? And I've really loved that so much about you. That is really important because we're not always great at advocating for ourselves.
Yes.
So when you take that strength that you have in advocating for others, what would you tell people that are maybe struggling a little bit to advocate for themselves?
First of all, thank you, for sharing that perspective on me. I hadn't thought of it that way. I think that just comes naturally in terms of being able to advocate for other people. I think the hard part is advocating for yourself. And I would say that's still a journey that I continue to be on, as many others. It's not easy. And I think candidly, it's harder for women, right? We're not used to doing that. One of the things that I've learned through the course of my career is in terms of advocacy is really sitting down and thinking, what is it that you want to accomplish through advocacy, right? It's building your brand. It's more about who you are, what you've accomplished, the story you want to tell, and why is that important for you? Is it to build your networking effect, right? Is it to put you in a position for a better role internally? Or is it to showcase some of the great work that you've done to be an example for others in the industry, or in the type of environment that you work in? So I think there's lots of different reasons for wanting to advocate or create advocacy for yourself. And I think it's really kind of understanding the root of that. And each individual is going to have a different reason for it. And then how do you go about building advocacy? And I think people take on a variety of different approaches to that. I think personally, some things that I've done and learned, I'm still learning, right? What is the best way to do that? And what do I want to accomplish through advocacy? I think what has helped me is it's what's the story I want to tell and why? And who are the folks that I can influence or that can help me shape that story? And ultimately, the goal that for me is if I can advocate for what I've done, what I've accomplished, it's more setting an example and being an example for others that want to come into the industry or make a change from one industry to another. And hopefully set an example for women that inspire them that they can do things that they thought they couldn't do, right? Or look for opportunities or apply for opportunities they didn't think they were qualified for. That's what I hope that I achieve through advocacy. And then certainly there's always what's the next opportunity in my career, and what's the story that I want to share that will help me get to that next place.
I love the idea of setting the goal and knowing the goal to be able to sell how you're going to get there. I think that that's how I do it in challenges and taking risks and other things is where do I want to end up? Okay, now what do I need to do? And so in the advocating for yourself, it's really a similar strategy of saying, okay, if this is where I want to be, how do I have to position myself in a way that does the talking for that? I love that a lot.
Absolutely. And who are the right folks, right? Depending on what that goal or objective is, who are the right folks that can help you with that ultimate goal, right? Is it building advocacy within your organization, within your industry, with that networking effect? And I think all of that plays into it. But I think then that helps you take a more strategic approach to advocacy and networking and building those relationships and sharing your story.
No, that's great advice. Now, moving industries, consumer goods to hospitality certainly is one of probably several pretty big risks you've taken in your career path. Do you have a strategy or character traits of your own that you rely on in assessing risk? How do you decide which risks you're going to take and maybe which you're going to pass on?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I never look at it as actually taking a risk. It's more of looking at the opportunity and how it presents itself. Again, going back to what's the goal? What am I trying to accomplish? Can I be successful in that role? What's the skill set that I build that might be applicable to that particular role or environment? And then how do you position it as such, right? I think we're so used to thinking, I've been a hospitality professional for 10 years and I'm going to stay in this industry. But when you dissect the actual industry part of it and you actually take time to look at the skill set that you build and what you bring to the table, the world becomes your oyster. And so for me, I never thought of it as I'm taking a risk. It was, wow, what an exciting opportunity. And look what I can bring to the table, leveraging the experience that I have. And here's how it's applicable to this new role or to this new company. I think where the risk, or sometimes people might perceive as a challenge, is when you switch companies or you switch industries, you're having to build your reputation all over again, right? You're kind of starting from scratch. You're having to go in and sort of prove that you do have, in fact, the skill set, that you can be successful. You're having to learn a new industry or a way a new company operates. And that's, I think, where the risk comes into it, and can be a little scary. And where you have to recognize that it takes time to do that. But again, having the confidence that the reason why you were selected and placed in that role is that in fact you are qualified. And I think that's what people forget, right? They get themselves lost in this, oh my gosh, I now have to prove myself and start all over again. You've already established yourself as a leader or a subject matter expert. That's why they chose you to come into this role. Leverage that, and then start building. We talked about networking advocacy, start building that network right in that new environment by sharing what you bring to the table. And also, I think being honest about some areas where you may not have a familiar understanding of, right? Because it's a new industry. Ask questions, right? Find out who are the folks that are going to be in your court and are excited to learn from you, that you can learn from as well. And don't be afraid to admit when you still have a learning curve in certain areas, but also take confidence in the skill set that you bring to the table.
There are so many incredible insights there. Again, I want to follow up on so many. Let's turn to relationship building and networking, because you just talked about it both from continuous growth, from new job opportunities, new opportunities within your company. The hospitality industry is really special when it comes, I think, to relationship building and networking. But we don't always build our networks in the same way. We don't always socialize or develop those relationships in the same way from one executive to another. What are some of your strengths in relationship building and networking, or maybe some of the ways that you've adapted your personality to really be successful in that area?
I think it's, first of all, great point. I think what's so interesting and why I truly love hospitality and why it's different than, let's say, consumer packaged goods is you're having to build your networks and your relationships in a variety of different areas, right? There's within your own organization, then there's the broader industry. So, networking and building your relationships with your counterparts in other companies. And then you also have the team member networking piece, right? The folks that are actually operating in your hotels. And then the other piece, of course, is your franchisees and your owners, right? And so it's a really complex environment and dynamic. And I think where I've found success is leveraging those commonalities um, with each one of those groups and then asking questions. So the hotel industry, I was super new to, right? I really hadn't spent time with folks at the hotel level and understanding their backgrounds and getting to know them and understanding that profile. And I think that really helped build a relationship with those folks and maybe help them feel that I was truly interested in what they had to say because they're such an important part of the business. On the ownership side, I think one thing that was really interesting for me is being able to bring forward the professional skills that I have, but leveraging my Asian background with the Asian owners, right? And that commonality and building that networking effect and the relationships. And then with the non-Asian owners, it was truly the ability to run a business, right? Help me understand what's important for you. Again, asking those questions and building that relationship by really getting to know what people are motivated by, what's important for them, and how can I take some of the commonalities from my background or past or experience and build that connection point with that individual.
I think that's really great advice, to tailor the relationship building and networking to that individual. It's not going to be one size fits all for each of the stakeholders in your network.
That's right.
I think that's great advice.
That's
We
right.
talked a few minutes ago about your philosophy on taking risks is really seeing them as opportunities.
Yeah.
One of the things we hear a lot from the leaders that we've interviewed is that they view obstacles in the same way. Every leader has challenges they've had to overcome in that path. No one's has been, a paved road with no potholes, so to
That's
speak.
right.
So do you view obstacles in the same way as opportunities, either to grow or to do things differently or to reflect? How do you overcome challenges and obstacles that you faced along the way?
Yeah, so I've been working for a long time, and I think what I've learned uh, is that to look at those obstacles as learning opportunities and not let them hold you back, right? So, particularly when I was younger, sometimes obstacles can paralyze you, right? And they can impact your confidence. And as I sort of went through the motions, I realized, wait a second, the obstacle is actually a really great learning opportunity. How do I take that, leverage that, and how do you even talk about that with your peers or even in an interview? Because you're absolutely right, no path to success is straight and easy. And we all have learnings, and to think of it as, again, the opportunity that it presented itself. What did you learn from it? How did you overcome that obstacle? And how do you continue to use that as a driving force as you think about the future and what you want to accomplish, right? It's all part of that learning journey we have, whether it's a professional obstacle or a personal obstacle. That's kind of what makes life and work so interesting, is that it's never boring, but don't let it hold you back. I think that's where I found when folks get really caught up and they let it get in their head, it's hard for them to overcome, right? And talk about it, like feel good about it, embrace it. Because my goodness, to me, some of the best learnings I've had are from some of those obstacles I've overcome or some of the mistakes I've made.
Yeah, of course.
That's what makes us better. And I would think, I would say too, obstacles, think about your career in a broader way, right? Than just, I'm trying to get from A to B and I have all these hurdles I have to jump. Think of it, it's just like I talked about risk. Think of them as opportunities, right? And it's like a video game, right? You kind of reach each stage because you captured the carrot, and you've gone through a different door. And what did that give you? And take time to reflect on that and what that means for the future.
No, I think that's great. I think the idea of owning it, accepting it, figuring out how to move on from it is so important.
So important. And I think too, we have more control than we think we do. And that's the other thing is leverage and harness that as a superpower. Think of that as that's your superpower is you're gonna be able to overcome these obstacles just like superheroes do, and they learn from that. And they're able to harness that as an energy, and that I think will fuel you going forward versus as a negative.
That's great advice. So late last year, I heard the idea from a friend of mine of this personal board of directors, that women should have a support system that has a very defined set of people for advising and guidance, whether it's personal, professional. And one of the things that I've been really interested in hearing on a lot of these interviews is how many people pick support systems that they know will challenge them, that they know will call them out on their crap, so to speak. Tell
Yes,
me
to be honest, I love it.
Tell me about your support system, your board of directors. How do you identify who you want in that group, and what do you rely on them the most for?
Rachel, I'm so glad you brought this topic up, and I'm so glad the way you framed it up because it's also about accountability, right? And if you think about what a board of directors actually does in a corporation, it's to hold the organization accountable, right? To delivering against goals and objectives. So now it goes back to, right, you have your board of directors, and I would say everyone, male, female, you know, someone who's been in the workforce for a long time, somebody who's new, everybody should have their board of directors, right? Their network that they rely on. But you're absolutely right. You don't want just a bunch of cheerleaders in your back court. You want folks who bring different things to the table based off of the different needs in your life, and folks that you're going to be held accountable to, and that are going to push you and that are going to ask you the right questions and are going to make you think about yourself and your opportunities and your successes and your failures in a way that's going to make you better. And who are those people that do that? But you're 100% right. I think we tend to lean into the people who are going to be your rah rah cheerleaders in your back court. I find those, I love them, and you absolutely need that, but you also need that balancing effect of the people that are going to say, wait a second, you're complaining that you didn't get that promotion or you didn't get that job, but what did you do that will allow you to get it the next time? What held you back, right? If you made a mistake, don't dwell in it, like keep going. But what did you learn from it? You need to make sure you're going to have people that are going to hold you accountable and that you trust. And I think that's the other key is make sure you have people that you can trust, that you have confidence in. And I think too, it's good to have a board of directors that are unrelated to one another because they'll challenge you in different ways. They'll make you think things about differently, but it also goes back to ask powerful questions and say, this is what I need from you. I need you to help me think through this in a way that isn't just being a cheerleader, but what did I do wrong? Like, how did I get this? How did I go down the wrong path? If that's what it is, or how do I continue to go down the straight and narrow path? Oh, here's one thing that someone gave me great advice on, Rachel, which was, we always say, oh, I need feedback, but it's one thing to say, give me feedback. It's another thing to be really specific, right? And so it's, what are the things you should stop doing? What are the things that you should start doing? And what are the things that you should continue to do? And when you think about the board of directors, are those the individuals that can help you in those different parts of your life kind of work through those three questions?
That's such a smart way of looking at it. And one of the ways that I rely on my support system, my board of directors a lot, is to help me redirect when I am maybe not thinking optimistically, or I am my own worst enemy. Sometimes my biggest obstacle and challenge is myself.
Yes,
So,
that's right.
what advice do you give to others if they find that maybe the loudest voice in their head is their own and it is not productive or helpful for them? How can they kind of overcome some of that negative self-talk to really, as you said, I think when you were talking before about risks and challenges, to kind of figure it out and move on from it, but not get trapped in it?
I think one thing that has helped me in the past is sort of write down the things that you're most proud of or that you have achieved success in, right? And that starts to put you in that positive place. And then what are the things that you feel frustrated by? And all of a sudden you'll look at, wow, I've done a lot, or I've accomplished a lot, or I'm proud and excited about the things that are on this positive list. I think that's what we don't take time to do. I think particularly women, I think we tend to be harder on ourselves in general. And we tend to focus on the negative and what we're not doing. So I start with, what am I doing that I'm excited about? And again, this is where you lean into your board of directors. What are the things you should continue to do? What are the things you're proud of? And then to take a look at what are the things that you want to keep doing or that you feel frustrated by, and then start to think about, who are the folks or people on your board of directors to get you through that, right? And to be able to sort of come to the table of, hey, I need you as a thinking partner. And also, Rachel, don't ever be afraid to ask for help, right? That's the other thing. Like sometimes we all get stuck, regardless of whether you're a CEO or you're a new manager in a company. You always get stuck on something, and it's okay to ask permission and ask for help and support in those areas, right? And be authentic to yourself, and that no one's perfect, and it's okay. And I that's a constant struggle I have, is right. Everything has to be an A plus, right? That's the sort of the family I grew up in. Why didn't you get the A plus? That's nice, you got an A. And sometimes I have to take a step back and say, you know what? It's okay. Not everything's an A plus. What are the things that really matter that should be? Where are the things that really matter where I'm not? And then spend your time focusing on that, not the nitty gritty, smaller things that really don't matter.
Well, one of the things I loved that you said there too is to really celebrate your successes. I think you're right, men and women. I think we tend to really spend as much time as we can on things that maybe didn't go as we
Right.
wanted, or the next thing we have to do, even if it's not a positive or negative. But we are like, oh yeah, that's great, and then we move on if something great happens. And so taking a moment, an uninterrupted moment, to really celebrate those successes, I think can go a long way in how we see ourselves and how we kind of communicate with ourselves.
100%. And I
Okay.
think, sorry, Rachel, one of the things is, this just came up when you were talking, because I had a great conversation recently with a friend of mine who's been in the same role for a long time, and was frustrated, feeling like, oh, I'm not moving in my career, and I feel like I'm stuck a little bit. And I said, well, wait a second, look at the career you currently have. Look at what you're doing. Look at the impact you get to have in your business. And sometimes you just need, that's that whole board of directors,
Yeah.
right? It's sometimes you need to sort of get it out there. But you need to be brave enough to have that conversation. What are your insecurities, and who are those right people where you feel comfortable opening up to them, and then having those folks be able to kind of, that's where you do need that cheerleader, or to remind you, wait a second, look at what you are doing and are accomplishing. What I'm hearing from you now is you need a new challenge. So let's talk about that. Like, stop wallowing in it. Let's move on. And what are some of the things that you think are going to inspire you as you think about your future?
I love that. That's great. One of the things that we are seeing a renewed focus on, especially as we kind of come out of the pandemic a little bit, is wellness and self-care. I have said
Yes.
repeatedly over the last year that my advice to my younger self has changed a 180 from what I used to say, to really that self-care is about me also. It isn't me first. It's not me, not at all, but it's just including yourself in that picture. How do you think you do, not from a rating system, but your emphasis on self-care, because it can mean different things for different people. It can be exercise, it can be friends, it can be outside, it can be
That's
vacation,
right.
whatever it is. How do you think that you do taking care of yourself? And what advice would you give to people who are not prioritizing it as a me also, and maybe making that the one thing that they're just not keeping up with?
Yeah, first of all, I think I'm really guilty, as most people are, of making a lot of excuses and complaining that I'm not striking the right balance, and then um, blaming other things in my life for that. And I think that's where you say, wait a second, I have to own that. That's on me. And then you have to define what it is that you as an individual define as wellness and self-care, because everybody has a different definition of what that means. Um, and I think recognizing, right, part of that is the balance, right? That's a big topic of conversation, particularly through the pandemic and certainly as an outcome. So I think again, it's being really clear and taking time to assess, how do you as an individual define wellness and self-care? What does that mean for you? What are the elements? What's really holding you back? And maybe even having a partner in that, right? And sort of that honesty partner of, okay, this is where I am, this is where I want to be. And then what are your goals and objectives? But keep the goals really simple at first. So it's beginning of the year. It's a great time to have the conversation. We all have our resolutions, and a bunch of us were talking about that recently. And a friend of mine said, "Well, I'm going to lose 20 pounds." And I thought in my head, "Oh my gosh, if that was my resolution, that would be really difficult, because for me, that would be a lofty goal." So, do you start with something small and really achievable? I'm going to take 5 minutes out of every day to stretch or deep breathe. And then that 5 minutes becomes, you know what, I'm going to do a 10-minute walk outside every day to get fresh air and just clear my mind.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, when you start thinking of it in smaller increments, it doesn't feel so scary and lofty. Um, and then, is it sometimes self care is, I got to take care of myself, but then I need to take care of my family, right? A lot of us are men and women trying to balance that. But we try to do everything all at once. And is there a way to sort of say, you're not going to be 100% all the time for everything? But are there either different points in the day where you have different focus areas, or different times in a week or in a year where you focus on one thing more than others? And I think, give yourself permission to not be perfect. Give yourself permission to sort of say, what does that mean for me and what's important for me? And then you have to remind yourself and have your accountability buddy to say, stop making excuses. So you didn't work out for the last 3 days, or you didn't eat healthy the last 3 days. That's on you, right? That's not on anybody else. But then how do you get back on track, right? How do you make better choices, decisions, and how do you carve out those 5, 10, 15 minutes? We can always find those small increments of time.
Well, I think that small increments is a great way of looking at it too, because I do think it's very overwhelming if you're like, I'm going from zero self-care to 100.
That's
It's
right.
going to be very easy to be like, I can't do 100.
You
And then
set
you do
yourself
zero.
up exactly for failure. And I think, well, just start small. Start with something that can do, and check it off, and celebrate that. It's funny. There's several of us at work. I Hilton has this unbelievable environment, and the brand team here, we are incredibly close, and I feel very fortunate to be in this environment. And we were recently all saying we need to get back on track of taking care of ourselves, and so we ordered little weights into the office. There were 5 of us, and we got on a Peloton app. And periodically through the week, we're like, 10 minutes. We got 10 minutes. We all go to somebody's office and we do a little 10 minute.
I love it. I mean, you're right. That is absolutely a critical part of it. And it works for you guys, and you can fit it in. I love the buddy system too.
Yeah, the buddy says it keeps us accountable. It's also fun because we get that camaraderie. We get to take a little bit of a break from work. It's 10 minutes. You can always find 10
Yeah.
minutes.
Oh,
And that's what's great about technology, and something like Peloton and the apps. They have these little 5, 10 minute, 15-minute increments. So technology's allowed us to do that even better and more effectively. So leverage those tools.
that's a great idea. As I mentioned, I knew we were going to run short on time, so we're going to wrap up with just a couple of quick things here. I mentioned that self-care is the advice I give to my younger self now. Part of the reason I've always loved this question is I believe that we are all works in progress. We are all continuing to grow, but reflection for me is a really important part of that, of looking back and kind of seeing my path and what I've done and how I've done it differently along the way. What would you tell 22-year-old Shruti about, where you are today and what you've learned that might have helped you out on that path earlier on?
Um, Here's what I would tell myself. First of all, I would say, good for you. You continue to look for different opportunities outside your comfort zone. right? And not sort of stay within this one realm or one world and not be afraid to change, which can be scary, particularly if you've been in a place or environment for a long time. I think the other thing is, we talked a little bit about obstacles and mistakes. Don't let that hold you back. And the third thing, this is advice that I received years ago from an incredible mentor of mine when I was in the luxury cosmetics industry that I haven't followed, um, consistently. But the advice was, hey, make sure that you are interviewing on some sort of regular cadence outside of your industry or outside of your company or even within your company. And it doesn't, it can be every year, it can be every few years, but it does a couple of things. Number one, it motivates you to update your resume and get your professional story in order, right? What's that elevator speech?
Hmm.
Number two, it shows what you're worth on the open market. And number three, it validates whether you're in the right role and whether you're in the right company. And I thought that was great advice. And I think if I go back and sort of say my younger self is, I did, I moved around a lot when I was younger. So I did that. And then as you tend to get more comfortable or you're in these places, right? I love hospitality. I love Hilton. There hasn't been a reason to really do that. But there are things where I thought, it's still good because it reminds you of the story you have on the table, right? Look at what you've accomplished. Look at what you're doing. Look what else is out there. You know what? There's some great stuff out there, but I love what I'm doing. I love the company I'm with, and it reinforces the decisions that you're making, and it keeps you from getting stuck.
What a unique perspective. I really like that a lot. Well, we are out of time, but I want you to take 10 seconds and tell me, where's your happy place? Where are we going to see that trademark smile as broad as it can possibly get?
The happy place. I think there are a few happy places. Definitely with my family, but with my family when we're outside and enjoying the outdoors. I love hiking, so that for me gives me a sense of serenity and peace, particularly when I'm with the people I love. And I truly enjoy traveling, right, to explore and seek new opportunities and try new foods. And so I would say those are my two big places of happiness. And one of my resolutions is to do more of that, right? Get outside more frequently with my family and spend time together. That brings us closer together, an environment where you're not distracted by technology, and go back to exploring more because we didn't have, I felt like I didn't have, take the time that I wanted to in the last couple of years with pandemic. And now I think, I'm not going to use that as an excuse. I'm going to get out there, travel more with my friends and family.
I love that so much. Well, Shruti Gandhi Buckley, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing your
you.
path, the insights that you've had. For everyone listening, we hope you've enjoyed your time with us today. And for more interviews with great DEI advisors from the hospitality industry, we hope you'll visit us at deiadvisors.org or follow us on LinkedIn. But Shruti, thank you so much for your time. And on behalf of my own personal growth and the hospitality industry, thank you for your leadership and all you do to elevate women especially, but also the team around you and the industry itself. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and thanks to you and David, because I think the work that you're doing with DEI and Associates is truly remarkable, and I'm excited that this platform is available. So, thank you. I think that's fantastic and a wonderful gift that you're giving to the industry.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year, Rachel.